All right, so now that I've finally finished Gabriel Knight 3, there was a lot of editing that went into that one. I talked about it in one of my other channel updates, where essentially I was playing in 1920 by 1080, which I'm also just going to upload that version without my typical Let's Play Sierra games thing on the side, so that people will be able to see the whole 1920 by 1080 if they so wish, without the little banner on the side and get the full screen size. But there was a lot of editing that went into that because of the various issues of how that game works. So what is next? So I've already played the Colonel's Bequest, so that one's already done. It's a very, very fun game. Probably one of my, not my favorite games, but it's up there near the top. I think it's just beautifully done, and it's also a very fun game. Which I also did the second one, which is the Dagger of Amun-Ra, which, I liked it, but not as much as the first one. Somehow being stuck in a museum and no one leaving seemed kind of odd. And also the way that people would walk into a room where there is a dead body, like a freaking dinosaur through someone's corpse, and they don't even react to it. They're just standing there. That's just really odd. And then I beat one of the toughest Sierra games that there is, and that would be none other than Codename Iceman. So many people actually give up on trying to beat this game because it is insanely difficult. So hopefully my video can help people get through it if they ever choose to watch it. And then, just most recently, as if you're watching this channel, you probably know, I've actually been doing the Gabriel Knight series. Now I can talk about Gabriel Knight 1 forever because of how much I love that game and how much it influenced me in terms of how much I love Louisiana, or specifically New Orleans, and the whole voodoo thing. And then there is The Beast Within, which is a longer game. There is a lot of running back and forth in this game, but I still absolutely love The Beast Within. I thought Dean Erickson did a good job picking up, Tim Curry's shoes, because those are big shoes to be filling. But as you know, if you've been playing this or if you've ever played Gabriel Knight 3, Tim Curry actually does return to his role as Gabriel Knight, which I thought was incredible. I thought it was great that he actually, it seems like he enjoyed it enough the first time because he could pick whatever role he wants. The dude's enormously famous, and yet either Sierra paid him enough money or he actually enjoyed it enough to come back and do Gabriel Knight 3. So that's the one I just finished. Total time was like 16 hours in that game. And then I also did the first Heroes Quest. And what I want to do with Heroes Quest is I kind of want to space them out because each one, basically, from the first one, you have three options, right? You have the fighter, the thief, or the magic user. And I kind of want to do each one and then play each progressive game with each of those characters. So I'd beat it with a fighter, then, import that fighter into Quest for Glory 2, beat it, so on. But that I'm going to space those out because of how random and how much replay those games have. So then I also did King's Quest, which was actually the first series I did. And when I first did it with this channel, I wasn't too savvy on what I was trying to do with the video, and the quality was horrible. So what I've been doing is while other games are rendering or uploading, for example, Gabriel Knight, I managed to play King's Quest 1 all over again. And then I just recently, just today, the same day that I uploaded Gabriel Knight 3, I uploaded King's Quest 2, which I replayed. So it's been kind of fun going back to those. But when I go back to King's Quest 3, this one is typically what I would call the bane of my existence because of the evil wizard, or however you pronounce his name. He is always a pain to get around, no matter what. So there are a few random factors like getting the eagle's feather, waiting for that thing to just randomly appear. So I will be playing King's Quest 3 sometime in between while other games are rendering, but that's not what I'm going to play next. And then there's King's Quest 4, which I also want to replay for the same reason I just talked about with the other King's Quest games. The video quality was horrible. King's Quest 4 is my personal favorite. I actually think King's Quest 4 was the best of the series. It started off with, they had a strong female character as the lead, which was not common in video games especially, so it was kind of cool. But I like the overall story, the art, and everything about it. I'm also going to replay King's Quest 5. Now, unfortunately, King's Quest V is probably my least favorite of the series. There's something missing to it, and I can't put my thumb on it. I think about it all the time, and I can't figure out why, of them all, and this is even including the EGA version of King's Quest 1, like, there's something about King's Quest V that I don't enjoy. And it's not Cedric. Before someone says Cedric, it is not Cedric. I actually don't mind Cedric, other than he he says poisonous snake instead of venomous. And I noticed in King's Quest 2, they do the same thing. They call it a poisonous snake rather than a venomous. And then I am going to play King's Quest 6, which was the last one that came out kind of shoddy. So that'll be the last replay that I do of King's Quest 6, but that's not what I'm going to play next. That's going to be while stuff is rendering and stuff like that. But I've already played King's Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as well as King's Quest 7. But by King's Quest 7, I kind of figured out how to make the videos fit into the screen and kind of look okay. So I probably will not replay King's Quest 7. I may do it just because if I do King's Quest 1 through 6, why not just redo 7 and see if it's any better? Who knows? I may or may not do King's Quest 7. But what's another game I played on this channel? I've actually played a lot of games. Oh, that's right. There's Lighthouse. Lighthouse is the true bane of my existence. By far, so far to date, that has probably been the least pleasurable game I've ever played in terms of Sierra games. I've played other games that are worse than Lighthouse, I think. But Lighthouse was such a offbeat, difficult, kind of weird, out of there. I know they were trying to get that whole Myst thing, but I don't know. Lighthouse was very difficult to enjoy. And then on top of it, I ran into some technical issues while playing Lighthouse. So that also hampered my enjoyment of it. But I also played Leisure Suit Larry. I probably got Leisure Suit Larry, especially the first couple, probably memorized. Leisure Suit Larry was probably the one game that I got into the most because back then I was young, adolescent, and games where you're a guy trying to have sex was, just unheard of. And so that appealed to my youthful brain that has carried on to, I'm just at a much older age. But then I also played Leisure Suit Larry 2, which is by far my favorite of the entire Leisure Suit Larry series. But a close second, which is another one I played, was Leisure Suit Larry 3. Now, the reason I like Leisure Suit Larry 3 so much is because I enjoy the fact that this was, I think, the first game where you could swap between the main characters as the story progressed. So you basically start off as Larry, and you do a number of things as Larry. And then eventually you'll swap over to becoming Passionate Patty, and you go back and forth, and the two of them eventually unite, and they visit Sierra, which is actually kind of cool because you see the set of like Police Quest and King's Quest 4 and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. Now, they skipped Leisure Suit Larry 4 because Al Lowe said, I'm never going to make a Leisure Suit Larry 4 after he made 3. And then apparently he got pressured into making another game, which was Leisure Suit Larry 5. And maybe because he got pressured into making it, but Leisure Suit Larry 5 is by far the worst Leisure Suit Larry game. You don't have to do anything. You can win it without even really trying. There's no dying. It even lacks a sense of humor. Like, it was too However, Leisure Suit Larry 6, Al Lowe found his groove again, and that game felt a lot more like Leisure Suit Larry as opposed to 5. 5 felt very forced, and that may have been the case. Like, he may have just been told, you have to make another Leisure Suit Larry game. And so maybe his heart wasn't in it because that game felt atrocious. But Leisure Suit Larry 6, back to being a fun game. I enjoyed playing that again. And then Leisure Suit Larry 7. It's really hard to compete with Leisure Suit Larry 7. I know I said Leisure Suit Larry 2 is my favorite, but Leisure Suit Larry 7 basically had like Disney-esque animation. And on top of it, completely fully voiced, had a bunch of both visual and audio gags through the whole thing. It's very well done from start to finish, has a lot of interesting and fun characters, and it has a bunch of Easter eggs where you can actually see, I guess, digital nudity, which was, kind of unheard of, really, to go to that length. But Leisure Suit Larry 7 had it. And then there was the more unusual kind of games, which was Manhunter. So I did Manhunter It's showing San Francisco, but technically Manhunter New York is first. And then I did also Manhunter San Francisco, which is showing. I enjoyed the Manhunter games. There was just the that one part. I believe it's in Manhunter New York where you're going through the park and there's these bombs, and I died so many times. And even though you're watching the computer's called MAD, MAD, and even though you're watching it, kind of following their movement, it was for me very difficult to find the right path without blowing up. And if you watched my Manhunter New York playthrough, you watched me blow up quite a bit. So I liked that Manhunter had a more darker edge to it. Speaking of darker edges, we're going to slide right into Phantasmagoria, the first one, probably by far my favorite FMV movie, my favorite FMV game. So Gabriel Knight 2 was great, but there's something about that I've always enjoyed myself about like haunted houses and stuff like that, which is probably why I like the first Longbow game. It's not a haunted house. You do see a ghost, I guess, but it's not a haunted house. But it's that you're stuck in a creepy manor house thing, and that's the same vibe the first Phantasmagoria has. And I immensely enjoyed the first Phantasmagoria game. Like, I'll replay that quite frequently. The second Phantasmagoria game starts off good. You're playing this guy named Curtis, has no relation to the first Phantasmagoria game at all, other than it's an FMV and a Spice Era. They do make a reference in there to the first one, but that's it. That's a very loose connection. But the second one, you end up going into, I believe it's called Dimension X, and when you get to that point, it gets like really, really weird. So yeah. And then another game I played already was the first Police Quest game, which was the EGA version of it, which I actually enjoy the Police Quest game. Probably the first one is probably the weakest in terms of like story, because you're just going after this guy named the Death Angel, or Jesse Baines. And it's kind of odd, one of your informants is a lady of the evening, who you end up developing a relationship with. And it's I wish there was more build up to that. Like, I wish they'd kind of set that up in the first one and then built into the second one. And maybe that's where you finally get married and stuff like that. Because in Police Quest 2, you kind of do the same thing. It's far more developed, but my favorite of the Police Quest series was definitely Police Quest 3. It, once again, probably because it goes to that sort of horror vibe, it reminded me of your traditional 80s movies where the cops do all these like things on the map to see where these murders have taken place, and oh no, it makes a pentagram, which is exactly what Police Quest 3 does. Police Quest 4, Jim Walls had left Sierra by this time, and it was given over to the actual main guy for the Los Angeles Police Department, Daryl. And he basically took it out of the original setting, made it based out of Los Angeles, made it like more realistic with the FMV type setting to it. Good game, but definitely feels different than all the other Police Quest games. And then there was Space Quest, and who doesn't love Space Quest? Space Quest is chock full of humor, and speaking of death, half the fun is dying in Space Quest. So I immensely loved playing the first Space Quest game. Definitely, like, it was good from the start. And it's funny because in the first one you get to name the hero. So if you press enter, it defaults to Roger Wilco, but you can call it anything. But eventually they adopt the idea that his name is Roger Wilco throughout the rest of the series. And in Space Quest 2, Hall's Revenge, it was pretty fun. It definitely picks up from the first one, which was really, really cool. But without a doubt, my favorite of the entire series is definitely Space Quest 3, which is the Pirates of Pestilon. There was something about the whole feel to this game, the graphics, the story, the two guys from Andromeda being in it. Everything in there just connected so well. But a close second would probably be Space Quest 4. Now, normally if you ask me how I feel about any kind of time jump story, especially back when I used to read comics and collect comics, I used to hate characters that time jumped and then they ended up staying in the main part of the universe and stuff like that. But I actually really enjoyed Space Quest 4, other than the time police with the skating rink Took a couple of tries, but I finally figured out how to get past it, obviously because I beat it. Space Quest V was also really fun. If you are a Star Trek fan, there's probably way more to get out of this game. I was more of a Star Wars guy, but I still immensely enjoyed Space Quest V because it was just so well done. Unfortunately was not done by the two guys from Andromeda. They had had a split by that time. And then there was Space Quest 6. Probably my least favorite of the series, despite graphically, it's probably the prettiest one in terms of having modern graphics and stuff like that. But like the way Roger looked when he was walking around looked very flat and two-dimensional. So it was weird that it had all these great graphics, but the way Roger looked very flat. And then there was also Space Venture, which is technically not a Sierra game, but Mark Crow and Scott Murphy, who had made Space Quest 1, 2, and 3, got back together and they did a Kickstarter, which was Space Venture. I actually really enjoyed the game. Even I was in the I'm going to brag here for a minute. I was in the credits and all that stuff because I was in the beta and all that fun stuff. I really enjoyed it. Even the buggy version, I enjoyed Space Venture, and they've released it and they're still working on it. So there's still more coming out for that, a solid version of it. What else? Oh, there was the Legend of Carandia series. So I also played Legend of Carandia. The reason I did that is originally the first Legend of Carandia, which is what it's showing, they had an advertisement on the box that said, if you like King's Quest, you'll love this game, or something to that degree. And it's in the background of the screenshot. You'll see it on the upper left. And they got sued for it. So Sierra said, hey, you have to take that off. You can't use us as part of your advertising. And when I bought it originally, way back when, it definitely reminded me of King's Quest. And I actually immensely enjoyed that game. The only thing I don't like in the first one is the gem thing because it's randomized and it's super random. So if the gem doesn't work, it teleports back to where it was. So you have to save each time you do a gem. The second one is probably technically a better game, but I still enjoy the first one more. The third one, which is Malcolm's Revenge, who was the main villain for the other, I think Malcolm's Revenge is by far the weakest. There's a lot of weird areas in the game and stuff like that. And I don't know, it just felt forced. There was a lot of puzzles in there. If you've watched my playthrough and you see where I get to the cat island, I can't stand that part of the game. Like literally ruined everything else up to that point. So what else was there? Oh, there was one more game. Speaking of moving outside of Sierra, similar to Mark Crow and Scott Murphy, who made Space Venture, Jim Walls, who had made the original Police Quest, made a game called Blue Force. And I actually really loved Blue Force. To me, Blue Force felt like Police Quest 4. Like, if they'd changed the character name and all that stuff, it could have literally, with just a few minor tweaks, been Police Quest 4. Blue Force was actually a great game, and if you haven't played it, I highly, highly recommend it. So then that still leaves a bunch of Sierra games to play. So what am I going to play? Well, how about this as a clue? Showing off this map. Lloyd Alexander, do you know what books he's written? Oh, well, there's my book series that I have from Lloyd Alexander. And there's the empty box. Well, that's not a clue. So let's take a look at the books. Okay, Lloyd Alexander. Well, we already know that. So here's the first book, and it's called The Book of Three. I'm going to put that in there, slide it back into the box. Let's take a look at the second book. Lloyd Alexander is the author. No shock there, since it's his series. The Black Cauldron. Could that be a clue? Let's go ahead and put that book back. That's book 2. Let's look at book 3. Lloyd Alexander. Surprise, surprise. What is this book called? The Castle of Lear. All right, so let's put that one back. And the next book, book 4. Lloyd Alexander is the author. Shocking. And the fourth book is called Terran Wanderer. So that's book 4 in the series of Bryden. And the final book is right here. Book 5, written by Lloyd Alexander. Shocking. All right, and this one is called The High King. So, based off of that, have you figured out what the next game is that I'm going to play? Well, here's another clue. Why don't I just point to it? It's the second book in his series, And no surprise, if you are familiar with Sierra, it is called the Black Cauldron. Now you're going to see a bunch of names in here like Al Lowe, Roberta Williams, Scott Murphy, Ken Williams, Mark Crow, all these people that you know for other games. Now before I start this, now the way the Black Cauldron works is different than every other Sierra game. Rather than using like get weapon or get this or whatever, you have to use the function keys. So like F4, F5, F6. That's how that works. Now, before I get to the Black Cauldron, which was programmed by Al Lowe, I am going to do my Gabriel Knight commentary. Now, 16 hours of video, that is a lot of commentary. So I'll probably speed up some of the video. So that is something you still have to look forward to. But coming up next will be the Black Cauldron.